Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the latest Everton news. We're going to sit down and talk about Allan's departure to UAE side Wahda. We're also going to talk about Everton's dominating 3-0 win over Liverpool in the Merseyside derby on Sunday, as well as a couple of other bits of news and information that have been floating around over the last 24 to 48 hours or so. We have just spoken about the injury update we had yesterday regarding Nathan Patterson. I thought we'd do that in a separate video because we did do a separate video, initially discussing the injury to Nathan Patterson, and I said in that video, the original one, that any update that we had, any bit of information that we had, we'd sit down and we'd talk about as its own sort of entity. So we're not going to touch on the Nathan Patterson injury in this one. We have literally just finished the live stream discussing this. So if you want to hear my thoughts and want to hear the latest news surrounding that, because we have had a bit of an update on the time frame of how long Nathan Patterson will be out for, then please do go and check that live stream out after this one. But we have got a bit of information to talk about today as the international break comes to a close. I still think there's a couple of games to go before the end of it. I'm not too sure when the last game is, but given we're now on Tuesday and Everton play away to Southampton on Saturday, I would assume that today will be the last round of international fixtures. We know, of course, as we've just briefly mentioned, Nathan Patterson featured for Scotland in their game against Ukraine last week and unfortunately picked up that injury that we've spoken about. Vitaly Mykolenko did feature for Ukraine in the following fixture and I believe got through it okay. Missed out on the Scotland game because of a bit of an injury or a bit of a sort of knock that he picked up in training. However, he obviously got over that quite quickly because he then featured in Ukraine's next game. Amadou Onana has featured for Belgium and impressed from what I've read as well. I didn't quite catch the game, but from a lot of the reports that I've read from Belgian media and from media across the world that watched that game, they've been very, very impressed with Amadou Onana's performance for the national team. I think even Axel Witsel, fellow Belgium international, and of course a player that Everton were heavily linked with a couple of years ago for a number of summers, even come out himself and spoke about the impact that Amadou Onana had on the Belgium international team, and also spoke about a comparison that a couple of Evertonians have mentioned over the last few weeks or so, and that is to obviously former Everton player Marouane Fellaini. And Axel Witsel said something along the lines of, I understand the comparison, but in some ways he's better than Fellaini because he's better with the ball at his feet, which is obviously nice to hear. Gana Gueye is currently playing for Senegal as we speak, of course, and as I said, there have been a number of other Everton players that have been away on international duty. Alex Iwobi is impressed for Nigeria, scoring an absolute beauty of a goal, a couple of days ago. Connor Cody, I believe, was an unused substitute for England in both of their international friendlies as well against Italy and Germany. How he wasn't used is beyond me. Not that I'm complaining. In fact, I'm absolutely made up that he wasn't used because it was, Connor Cody is definitely a player that we can't afford to pick up an injury at the moment. But how certain England centre-halves end up playing over the likes of Connor Cody is beyond me. But as I said, I'm not particularly bothered because it means that he hasn't played and it means that he won't have to have that recovery ahead of a really important game for Everton at the weekend. But a bit of news that we have had over the last 24 hours or so is regarding Brazilian midfielder Allan, who has completed his move to Al Wahda in the United Arab Emirates. Everton actually only confirmed the move today. It was actually sort of, confirmed. It was put out there by Al Wahda and their social media teams about a day ago, maybe 2 days ago. We read the rumours about 3 or 4 days ago that this was very likely to happen. And as I said, it was confirmed by them a couple of days ago and only confirmed by Everton today. Everton said in a statement, Allan has joined United Arab Emirates club Al Wahda on a permanent transfer for an undisclosed fee. The paperwork for the Brazilian midfielder was finalised on Tuesday. I think that sentence was put in there because there was a couple of tweets aimed at Everton today is to state that, why has a player effectively left the club a couple of days ago and it hasn't been announced yet. So Everton basically are saying the reason it wasn't announced is because it was only officially, confirmed today. Everton said Allan moved to the Abu Dhabi-based side with the UAE transfer window open until the 4th of October. The 31-year-old joined Everton in September 2020 from Serie A side Napoli, going on to make 57 appearances for the Blues. Allan, who has 10 caps for Brazil, began his career in his in his homeland with Vasco da Gama before moving to Italy in 2012 for 3 seasons with Udinese. Everton thanks Allan for his service and wishes him all the best in the future. Now, I feel like this one has gone a little bit under the radar with Evertonians, and again, Allan obviously wasn't here for very long, was only here for a couple of seasons, obviously joined in Carlo Ancelotti's first summer transfer window as Everton manager, a transfer window which saw us bring in the likes of James Rodriguez, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Allan come in. I remember that week where, again, very similar to this transfer window that we've just had, really, where we hadn't signed anybody for a couple of weeks and everybody was a little bit worried, and then all of a sudden within the space of 7 days, and I remember it quite well because I was away in Greece at the time, within the space of 7 days we'd signed Allan, we'd signed James Rodriguez, and we'd signed Abdoulaye Doucouré as well. Obviously Ben Godfrey coming in that transfer window a little bit later on, but Allan with them formed part of that Everton team that went on to win 7 games on the bounce at the beginning of the season. Obviously seeing Everton top of the league at that point and things going really, really well under Carlo Ancelotti during that season that we all had to watch from our homes on the television because obviously of the pandemic. And Allan was a player who had a part to play in that Carlo Ancelotti system. Carlo Ancelotti had obviously worked with him before at Napoli. And he come in and for those first sort of 6 months of his Everton career, he done a really, really good job. I remember watching him away at Tottenham on the opening game of that season, and he was absolutely fantastic. And I remember watching him a number of times from that point. And he was, he performed really well as well in that season. And as I said, he suited the type of system and the type of style that Carlo Ancelotti wanted to implement at Everton. Now, the big question surrounding Allan was always going to be his age. He's currently 31 years old, which of course means he would have been 29 when he joined Everton Football Club. So there was always that question as to, is it a smart move financially for Everton to be spending, what we spent on him, which I think was around about £20 million, something like that, on a player that was at that time 29 years old, not particularly quick in the first place because of the position he plays, and obviously coming in from the Italian league and having to suit to the Premier League. And I think after a couple of months of good performances and strong performances alongside the rest of the Everton team at that time, Allan sort of started to struggle with, the pace of the league. He started to pick up a few injuries here and there. I remember him picking up one at Leicester away in that same season, which again was sort of a significant injury that kept him out for a number of months, and he never quite come back the same. As I said, he started really, really well, and then the pace of the league and ultimately, I think as Everton started to dwindle in that season, going from a team that were, second at Christmas and looking like real challenges for Europe to ultimately finishing 10th in the league and having a really disappointing end to the season. I think Allan's sort of performances dipped alongside everybody else's. And then from that point on, I think he struggled with injury. He struggled with any form of consistency in the Everton team. He was always a good footballer, Allan. He was always a good professional, and he was always technically a good footballer, and I still stick to the point that if he was still in Italy, I think he'd still be playing at that top league in Italy now with no real problem, because the pace of that league is extremely different to the Premier League, and obviously I think it's more suited to a player of his type, but because of the Premier League, the pace of the league, how fast it is, how demanding it is, the minute he started to pick up those little injuries, and one injury that'll keep him out for a couple of months and another one that'll keep him out for a few weeks, and then he struggled to get any form of consistency or match fitness back when he returned, it became quite clear that if Everton could go out and replace him with somebody who could do a similar job and he was a lot younger, then that was obviously the move that Everton were going to try and pursue. And, as I said, although he was a real bulldog on his day, and although on his day, he put in some really, really good midfield performances, because of his lack of pace and because of those injuries and because of the fact that he started to slow down a little bit, he became very easy to play against, I think, for opposition teams, and almost piled a little bit too much pressure on Abdoulaye Doucouré to try and do both roles, because Allan was bypassed far too easily in games. But he never dropped his head, he never spat his tummy, he never complained, he never did anything like that. He got his head down, he worked hard, and when he was called upon, he obviously, he stepped up and he played to the best of his ability, even if at times it wasn't good enough for what we needed at the time. Obviously, we had a change of manager, and I think when we had a change of manager, the Allan sort of situation went under the radar, because it was quite obvious at the time with the signings that Everton were making who those signings were being made for. So, in that summer of 2020, it was quite obvious that James Rodriguez and Allan were brought in for Carlo Ancelotti. They were players Carlo Ancelotti had worked with before, they were players Carlo Ancelotti could trust, and they were players that Carlo Ancelotti felt could improve Everton. Whereas the likes of Abdoulaye Doucouré and Ben Godfrey were players that Carlo Ancelotti probably knew very little about, more so Ben Godfrey than Abdoulaye Doucouré. In fact, I'm not too sure Carlo Ancelotti knew Ben Godfrey existed before he walked through the door of Finch Farm. And they were obviously brought in by Marcel Brands to, form part of the sort of I suppose the profile of player that Marcel Brands wanted to bring in at Everton. Certainly more so Ben Godfrey, young, big, hungry, physical, demanding, and obviously Abdoulaye Doucouré, similar but obviously not as young. So when Carlo Ancelotti left the football club, there was obviously this big cloud and question mark around James Rodriguez, because he was the superstar, he was the one that created the opportunities, he was the Champions League winning player that everybody looked at, and it was a big, oh my God, will he stay now? When Rafa Benitez come in, it became even more apparent that he wasn't going to stay because of their relationship or lack of relationship. But Allan sort of just went under the radar a little bit. It was just sort of like, because he was a professional, because he got his head down, because he worked hard, because he wasn't one to sort of cause a fuss or spit his dummy, it went under the radar. But I think it became quite apparent at that point, when Carlo had left and Rafa Benitez come in, that Allan probably was coming towards the end of his time as an Everton player. He was used last season, again, picked up injuries, again, when he played wasn't great, again, wasn't really up to task. And I think the final sort of nail in the coffin for Allan in his Everton career was when Frank Lampard come in towards the back end of last season, and it became quite apparent quite quickly that Allan wasn't going to have much part to play in a Frank Lampard Everton team, for the way in which Frank Lampard wants to play, and for the system in which Frank Lampard wants to play. And although Allan had injuries towards the end of last season, and had that have been different, maybe we'd have seen him a lot more. I just think as soon as we started to see this, I don't want to call it a new Everton, because we're still early on in this season, and I don't want to sit here and jinx anything, but as soon as we started to see this sort of Frank Lampard Everton team emerging towards the back end of last season, which was a team that had to give 110% in every game, constantly fought, constantly battled, constantly give everything, ran through brick walls, etc., it became quite clear that Allan was never going to be able to fit into this team, because he wasn't able to offer that. And then we went into this transfer window and we brought in players like Amadou Onana, Idrissa Gana Guy, James Garner, Connor Cody, James Tarkowski, players that were going to be able to give that and battle and fight and give everything and keep up to pace with the league and dominate in midfield. And I think it was quite clear at that point that Allan wasn't going to have any part to play in this Everton team. Even even a case of on the bench, he wasn't even getting on the bench, and this was before Amadou Onana come in. This was before Idrissa Gana get returned. So when those two players were brought through the door, as well as James Garner, it was quite clear that Allan was going to have absolutely no part to play for Everton this season. He just doesn't suit Frank Lampard's style and system, and that's fine, because as I said, on his day he was a really good footballer, and he had a role to play in a Carlo Ancelotti Everton team. But I suppose unfortunate for him, Carlo Ancelotti's Everton didn't last very long, and therefore Allan's Everton career was always on a downward spiral from that point. And I think it's another really good bit of business from Kevin Thelwell, I wish Allan absolutely nothing but the best, and I don't particularly think he's an awful footballer, but there is absolutely no point having a player who would be on a decent wage, I would assume, upwards of £60,000 a week, I would assume, for Allan, because when he was coming into an Everton team who had literally no midfield, and he was the choice of the manager at the time, and he was coming from a team that were in Europe, and if we all remember rightly, he was coming from a team whose president at the time openly said multiple times he's not going. I think the Napoli president even come out at one point and said, I'm made of steel body armour and I won't sell Allan. About a week later he was an Everton player. But that just shows how important he was to Napoli at that time, therefore emphasising the fact that he wouldn't have been on a cheap deal whatsoever. So for somebody who's on that amount of money and on that wage, there's absolutely no point in him just sitting around and turning up at Finch Farm and not being in the matchday squad. He doesn't fit the new system Everton are playing under Frank Lampard. He doesn't fit what Frank Lampard wants, so it was absolutely the right decision for him to move on. And I think Kevin Thelwell has done really, really well at that this season. As we can sit here and we can look at Amadou Onana, we can look at Adesina again. This is something that we're going to go into in a little bit more detail tomorrow. We're going to be joined by Cornet tomorrow to do a full transfer window review, and this is something we're going to go into a little bit more detail on. But, you know, we can sit here and talk about the players we've brought in and the players we've signed, but the fact that we've managed to, you know, get other players off the wage bill that were taking up places in the team and money on the wage bill and weren't suited to the system. I'm talking Andre Gomez, I'm talking Allan now, I'm talking obviously Cenk Tosun, I'm talking Jean-Philippe Gbamin as well. That again is to massive credit of the director of football, Kevin Thelwell, for being able to do that, because it was never just who can we sign this season and who can we bring in to improve the team. It was who can we get rid of that's getting paid a silly amount of money that has got no part to play in the future of Everton Football Club. And that's not a cutthroat, you're an awful footballer, we don't want you. That's just a, listen, at one point in time, you were needed and you had your place. Now that is over and you don't fit into what we're doing anymore. So thanks for your time, but you know you will be moving on, and I think that's exactly what has happened with Allan. It suits Allan because he's at an age of 31 now where he can go over to Abu Dhabi, make a ridiculous amount of money, play in a country with, again, where he'd be living the life of luxury, play there for a couple of years in his 30s, earn a stupid amount of money, and probably come back and finish his time, as a footballer in Brazil or maybe in Italy again. So it works for him, and obviously, as I said, it works for Everton as well. But no ill feelings towards Allan. I think for certainly that, few months of the beginning of Carlo Ancelotti's time at the football club, he certainly had a role and he was fantastic. Now you could say, well, ultimately, Cam, it's bad business because we spent 20 odd million quid on him. He has been paid upwards of £50,000-60,000 a week for the last 2-3 years, and he only had a real decent sort of 5-6 month period. And I understand that, I appreciate that, but the reality is that was the risk Everton were willing to take in order to appease probably the best manager in the world, and I will still stick to that point now, even though Carlo's left Everton, and I always said when Carlo left that I don't really care what he does now and what he goes on to do. I will still admit that he is the most decorated football manager on the planet. So it was clear that the football club and the owner and the director of football wanted to do everything they could to appease him, and part of that was bringing in James Rodriguez on a ridiculous amount of money, given his injury record and the injury problems he had at Everton, and bringing in Allan on not as much of a ridiculous amount of money, but still a lot of money, given his age and given the injury problems that he had. And, it was those deals that ultimately left us in a position last summer where we could only spend £1.5 million. We're now getting out of that situation, and we've been able to spend a lot more this summer, and we've been able to improve the team a lot more. And players like Allan, who it wasn't his fault, because it's not his fault we spent that much money on him and we give him that big of a contract, but players like Allan were always going to have to leave the football club for us to move into almost this next phase of Everton, if you like, under Frank Lampard. So no ill thoughts towards Allan whatsoever. I just echo what Everton said in terms of thanking him for his time at the football club. I thought that those had just volleyed a mouse or something, then it wasn't. It was just an extension lead. Echoing, the statement from Everton, wishing him the very, very best in his future. And yeah, I think it is a bit mad because it's sort of gone under the radar, this, but obviously we've still got Abdoulaye Doucouré, and we've still got Ben Godfrey, and you could say, well, they were signings of the Carlo Ancelotti era because they were, but I think Allan and James were the two that were quite evidently clear brought in for Carlo, and now obviously both have left the football club. So yeah, listen, I'm not going to say it's sad because I'm happy that Everton have managed to get a player off the wage bill who was never going to have a part to play in this current Everton team, but I wish Allan the very, very best of luck over in the United Arab Emirates. Philip says, best of luck, Allan. Wonderlust says, obrigado, good luck and thanks, Allan. I wish him well. I hope he turns into Allan Wahda and how he kicks arse there. Everton still face transfer worry, apparently, according to Eugene. Nice. Videos from the back seat in Greece, says Hernandez. That shows Hernandez has been here for a while. Hernandez knows that our announcement video for Allan was me in the back of I can't even remember what the car was. It was some form of Kia or Skoda or something along those lines. It was red, which we weren't happy with, but we couldn't really do much about because it was the only one the hire car place had available. Coming down an incredibly steep hill in Greece on the back seat of a car, filming this video to announce that Allan had signed for Everton. So we've come a long way since then. We haven't really. I was just on holiday and I didn't have a video prepared. The Blues says, another big earner off the books. What a difference a good transfer window makes. Now we don't have bomb scares for centre-backs and immobile centre midfielders that are liabilities in and out of possession. Interesting. Tazzo says, I really liked Allan, but we bought him 5 years too late. His legs are gone and was prone to giving away silly fouls in and around the box. Yes, Tazzo says, Allan's best game was Leicester away. Was running the show until he got injured. Never recovered after that. Yeah. Spot on. Absolutely spot on. And that was in that Carlo Ancelotti season, wasn't it? And much like Carlo Ancelotti's time at Everton Football Club, Allan never really got the true, full Everton experience, did he? And I know he was here towards the back end of last season, and I know we had a little bit part to play in, those games that, in terms of us fighting our way out of that position. But he was injured for a lot of it, and there was a lot of those games that he wasn't available for and he wasn't in the squad for. So, we always say about Carlo and James' time at Everton being stained by, something that none of us saw coming, which was a global pandemic. That meant that for the majority of the time that those two were here, certainly James never played in front of a full capacity crowd at Goodison Park ever. Carlo managed, I think, 6 times in front of a packed out Goodison, which isn't a lot considering he was here for 18 months. Allan, similarly, he played a lot more in front of a packed out Goodison, nearly 60 times for Everton, but not the full experience, I think we would say. And Delamere says, I have no hard feelings over Allan. Wish him all the best. Absolutely, I echo that completely. I wish him all the best. No issue with him whatsoever. I'm just happy that, as I said, we've managed to get one of those, one of those big earners, another one of those big earners off the wage bill that we now don't have to worry about. And listen, as I said, that has got nothing to do with Allan because he didn't choose how much he was paid, but it is what it is. Another former Everton player who is going round the news at the moment is Fabian Delph, who I think an hour ago has just announced his retirement from football. So yeah, listen, if you were around the channel this point last season, you will know my feelings towards Fabian Delph and his time at Everton, but I wish him the best in his retirement, and it was probably the right decision, let's be honest, and that's all I will say on that one. Anyway, moving on, Allan has left. As I said, wish him the best of luck and thank him for his time at Everton, but it was absolutely the right decision for that to be made. And again, I think it shows just how well Kevin Thelwell is doing at the moment, not only by getting rid not only by bringing in players to improve the team, but also getting rid of the players that ultimately are on a lot of money and had no future at the football club. But moving on now, let's talk about a Merseyside derby win. Whether it's the men's senior team, whether it's the women's senior team, whether it's the academy teams, or whether it's just 11 local lads or ladies from down the road in Everton kits, seeing an Everton team win at Anfield is absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable, regardless of whether it's men, women, adult teams, academy teams, or just random heads from down the road. Seeing a team in full blue winning at Anfield there's not many better feelings than that, there's not many better feelings than that. And we all got to feel that on Sunday as Everton picked up their first points of the season with a stunning Merseyside derby win over Liverpool at Anfield. Megan Finnegan, Jess Park and Hannah Bennison scored the goals in the 3-0 win over the bitter rivals, and it was a really, really impressive performance by Everton and a really, really exciting game. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it down to Anfield to watch it. I wanted to, but I couldn't. But I watched the game at home on Sky Sports, and it was a really, really dominating game of football. And as I said, regardless of whether it's the men's, the women's, or whatever else, seeing an Everton team turn up at Anfield and just wipe the floor with them lot is fucking amazing, regardless of what the situation is. And that's exactly what we all got to witness on Sunday. I mean, what a footballer Jess Park is, by the way. She is on loan at Manchester City, and now we've got a player in the men's first team on loan who I think we're all desperate for us to sign in Connor Cody, and we've got a player in the women's team on loan who I think we're all desperate to sign in Jess Park. Whether that will happen or not is probably asking a little bit too much, considering she has only recently signed the contract at Manchester City and, as shown on the weekend, is an absolutely unbelievable footballer. And yeah, as I said, she was fantastic. She was absolutely fantastic on Sunday, as was everybody else, by the way. Hannah Bennison coming off the bench, and, again, Hannah Bennison is one of the best young female footballers on the planet, one of the best young footballers on the planet. Struggled last season, as Everton did, with multiple changes of managers and different changes in the team and the squad, etc. Struggled to settle into a new club and a new system and a new environment. But, what that will have done for her confidence and her, that feeling as a player to come on in a Merseyside derby and score the goal that really solidified the 3 points will be, will mean a lot to her. Megan Finnegan, again, another player who's been at Everton for a long, long time. A really, really good header from the cross back post, headers it across goal, really well finished. Jess Park's goal is just absolutely wonderful, really cool, really composed, really calm, takes it round the goalkeeper, slots it as if to say, listen, I'm head and shoulders better than anybody on this pitch. And there's a highlight reel going on Twitter, and obviously I watched the game live, so I witnessed a couple of the bits of skill and clever play that Jess Park was showing on Sunday. But then when you actually watch the highlight reel on social media and the montage of clips of her performance, she's just wonderful. She's like a Wobie. She's just every bit of cool, calm collectiveness at her feet. She's just unbelievable with the ball at her feet. Flicks over the head, lovely bits of skill with the ball, taking it round goalkeepers as if they're not even there. Just a wonderful footballer. She has been called up to the England women's team today for her first senior call-up, which is obviously massive, and a big congratulations to Jess for that. She massively deserves that, and I'm sure her performance on Sunday will have solidified that call up. She's only 20 years old, being listed as a generational talent, and as I said, if Everton can somehow find a way to make that deal permanent, then it would be one of the best deals in football, not just women's football, but one of the best deals in football that you will see. Very unlikely to happen because she plays for Manchester City, who are a really, really strong side, and obviously has recently signed the contract there. But I suppose we can only hope, in the same ways we can only hope with Connor Cody, that Jess gets the Everton bug. And although, Manchester City might want to keep her, she goes back and says, no, I want to play for Everton. He's a boss. And, I want my future here. It's also massively worth noting that it was a crowd of 27,574 fans at Anfield, which is a Barclays Women's Super League record for Liverpool. Obviously, because it was at Anfield, and I think it was the second highest attendance of the weekend for the WSL. I think the North London derby had a ridiculous amount. I think that was something like 40,000 who went and witnessed that. But 27,000 is an incredible number, and it just shows how far the women's game is coming. And obviously the Euro win in the summer helped that massively. But 4 or 5 years ago, you'd have never gotten anywhere near the numbers of 27,000 fans going and watching a WSL game. And I'm sure every single one of those fans, even the ones that were supporting the Red Half of Merseyside, were enjoying the game the other day. And we're enjoying the quality that was on show, especially from those Everton players, because they were fantastic. As I said, Meg Finnegan's goal was brilliant. Jess Park's performance in itself was fantastic, and her goal was brilliant. And then Hannah Bennison coming on at the end and finishing the job off. I want to give a special mention to Gio as well, Brazilian player who's come into the football club again, come off the bench on Sunday and created the third goal practically by herself. Now, I know Jess Park ended up running onto it and getting the assist, and Hannah Bennison obviously finished it really well, but Gio made a chance out of nothing. The Liverpool defender had the ball at her feet, and practically was under very little pressure. Gio ran, a long distance to track her down, ended up having a little bit of a tussle with her, and then threw a slide tackle in, which took the ball away from her, allowed Jess Park to run onto it, getting into a good area, play a lovely weighted ball into Hannah Bennison, and Hannah Bennison made it 3-0. But there's a lot to be said about that type of action from Gio, and I was thinking about this in work yesterday and the importance of that attitude. This is an Everton Football Club thing that we've needed for a long time, and we're seeing it now in all forms of Everton, and it's really, really, really good to see. I mean, I'm an Evertonian, so I was sitting in the living room on Sunday screaming and shouting at the television, screaming and shouting when this specific situation occurred for the third goal. And the reason for that is because when we sit and talk about an identity, and when we sit and talk about Everton being a team that never give up and constantly fight and battle and work hard and throw tackles in and will give everything until the last whistle, and as I said, a team that what you're getting every time you play against them. That's not just the Everton senior men's thing. That mentality, that identity, that level of commitment and performance and desire and effort and fight should run through the entire club, whether it be the men's senior team, whether it be the women's senior team, whether it be the women's academy, whether it be the men's academy, whether it be any Everton team should have the same models and the same sort of the same ways of performing. Now, obviously, each team will have different tactics and different styles and different systems because they're different managers and different leagues and different ways of performing. But the one core, the one constant should be that if you're playing for Everton, whether you're playing for the Everton women's first team, whether you're playing for the Everton men's first team, whether you're playing for the under-18s, the under-15s, whether you're playing for, the women's academy, whoever you are playing for, if you are playing for Everton, the one constant, the one core should be that every time you're on that pitch, you fight for every ball. If a ball seems like it's too far gone, you go and fight for it anyway. You win it back, you battle, you work hard, you get in the faces of the opposition, you back your own team, you keep your head up if things are going wrong, and you battle and you go and you go and you go and you go and again. Now, we haven't seen that enough at Everton over the years, and Frank Lampard is doing a brilliant job at sort of bringing that through with the men's first team now, which again is something that we haven't seen for a long time, and I think something that Frank Lampard deserves massive credit for, because we're starting to see it now. But Brian Sorensen, the manager of the women's team, is also very clearly installing that into the women's side as well, because that little bit of play from Gio to create that third goal was exactly what you want to see from anybody playing for Everton Football Club. Not giving up on a ball that other players might have gone, or other sides, and in years gone by might have gone, yeah, what's the point? The defender's got the ball at her feet and I'm 15 yards away from her, so what's the point in running after her and chasing it, because, I don't want to waste energy, or I can't be arsed. But no, what we're seeing now from the men's team, whether it be Alex Iwobi, whether it be Anthony Gordon, whether it be Damari Gray, whether it be Amadou Onana, or the women's team, whether it be Gio, whether it be Meg Finnegan, Hannah Bennison, whoever, we're seeing players go, no, do you know what? I am going to chase that down, because he's being absolutely shit all game and he's terrified of the ball, so I'm going to run at them. And it's that commitment, desire, fight, urgency, energy that you want to see from everybody at Everton Football Club that is lucky enough to put that shirt on, regardless of which team you're playing for, which specific Everton side you're playing for. And we saw that an awful lot on Sunday, and it was an excellent performance by the women's and yeah, it was a really, 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 really impressive win. And if you wanted to go and see the women's team, and you watched the game, or you were at Anfield the other day and you thought, oof, I'm into that, I like that. They will be playing their first home game of the season against Leicester City on Thursday evening at Walton Hall Park. So if you're local to Liverpool and you're local to the area, then get down to Walton Hall Park and go and watch the first home game of the season against Leicester City as well. But a really, really good win. As I said before, there's not a scenario in which being able to sit here and say Everton thrash Liverpool and Anfield, there's not a scenario in which that isn't just absolutely amazing to say. And it's I'm glad that we've been able to sit here and say it now. It was a really, really good performance, as I said. Really good effort, good goals, and yeah, hopefully the women can pick up on that, gain a bit of confidence and momentum from that, and go and do the same to Leicester on Thursday night. Little bit more news, I suppose. The Goodison sleep out will return. Everton in the community confirmed today that the Goodison sleep out will be back. It will be on Friday the 18th of November 2022. You can sign up via a link that we have posted on our Twitter account. If you don't know what the sleep out is, it's basically an event raising money for Everton in the community, where you sign up and you go and spend the night at Goodison Park, sleeping in the stands, the park end specifically, and yeah, it's in order to effectively give people who are incredibly lucky like myself to, be under a roof and, have hot water and heating and etc., give them a taste of what it's like in those cold, dark, harsh winters to, be sleeping outside with none of that. So it's a really, really, really good event. It's all for a fantastic cause, raising money, obviously, for a really, really important cause. I've done it before myself. I think I'm going to do it again this year. So yeah, go and have a look at that on our Twitter or on Everton in the community's website as well. Allan has posted a Instagram over the last 20 minutes, which is a picture of him celebrating a goal last season. I'm not too sure what goal it was. It's at Goodison Park. And he has said, "Thank you for everything at Everton. It was a pleasure to be part of the Blue family. I will always be cheering you on. Wishing you the best you deserve." With a blue heart, hashtag up the toffees, which obviously is fantastic to hear. And, as I said, absolutely no disrespect to, no issue with Allan at all, and wishing him the very best over in Abu Dhabi. And yeah, that's pretty much all that there is to talk about. I mean, there was a rumour a few days ago that Man United are deciding whether or not to trigger David De Gea's clause in his contract to extend his deal, and if they do not do it, then it might bring the likes of Jordan Pickford into the conversation, which is nice, because hopefully that conversation will go away. But again, that's just a very, very early sort of rumour that is probably being put out there by some form of football agent to try and hurry up a process of whatever decision they're going to make on David De Gea, but not really something we have to spend too much time worrying about at this moment. Where are we then? And Andy says, "So glad the Everton women's team went there and gave them a proper spanking in front of a record crowd at Anfield." Absolutely. Up the toffees. What a decisive win from Everton across the park, says Wonderlust. Yes, Jess Parker's being called up to the England squad. Yes, says Eugene. And good news for football as a whole. Everton is back from the dead all over the place, everywhere. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Look, that is pretty much it for the latest news and information. As I said, not a massive amount going on. We're not in a transfer window, so you've not got a massive amount of rumours. And yeah, obviously we've been in an international break, so not a massive amount there as well. We will be back tomorrow, joined by Cornet once again to discuss the transfer window, the players that we brought in, the players that we sold, how we rate the window as a whole, and just have a bit more of an in-depth conversation about the progress so far this season. So don't forget to join us for that one. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. It does only take a second, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. As I mentioned before, if you haven't checked out that video that we've just done before regarding Nathan Patterson's injury update, then please do go and check that out. But until then, if you have enjoyed this one, please leave a like, subscribe if you're new. Massive thanks to everybody for watching live. If you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below. Big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you later.